You were never meant to carry the world on your shoulders. You were never asked by life to grip so tightly, to brace against every tide, to fight the river as it flowed, all in the name of survival. Somewhere along the path, you were taught that control was strength, that struggle was noble, and that surrender meant giving up. But today, I invite you to awaken to a deeper truth that real strength begins the moment you release your need to control everything. Surrender is not a white flag waving in the wind. It is not weakness clothed in spiritual language. Surrender is the opening of the soul's hands, unclenching from illusion, and finally allowing what already is. It is the courage to stop arguing with reality. It is the power of stepping aside so the universe can step in. Look at nature. The ocean does not resist the moon. The tree does not strive to make the seasons change. The sun does not apologize for shining. They each exist in effortless cooperation with something greater. Not passively, not indifferently, but in a sacred surrender to the divine intelligence that breathes all things into being. What if your life was never about conquering, but about remembering how to align? What if your power wasn't in force, but in flow? We've been conditioned to believe that surrender is synonymous with failure, that letting go means we've lost. But the ego only knows two settings: control or collapse. It cannot comprehend the grace that lives in the middle. The soul, however, knows a different language. It knows that surrender is the portal. It is the hinge that opens the door to peace, to wisdom, to healing. When you stop trying to fix the moment, you begin to feel it. And when you feel it without resistance, you start to be transformed by it. You were not born to suffer beneath the weight of your own expectations. You were born to fly freely in the sky of trust. And yet, so many walk through life armored in tension, constantly fighting what is, fighting their past, their parents, their partners, their pain. They wear spiritual armor, trying to protect themselves from life, all while missing it. But freedom does not come from resistance. Freedom comes from meeting life as it is raw, unfiltered, uncertain, but always sacred. Surrender is not the end of your power, it's the beginning of your real power. The power that doesn't dominate, but liberates. The power that doesn't control, but creates. It is the power that arises when you no longer believe you have to be the source of everything. There is a force in this universe that spins the planets, grows the flowers, and whispers to the caterpillar when it's time to become a butterfly. This same force lives in you, but it cannot work through clenched fists and closed hearts. It moves when you move aside. It heals when you release your grip. The irony is you never had control to begin with. The idea that you did was the illusion. You cannot control people. You cannot control time. You cannot control outcomes. You can only control your willingness to surrender into love, into presence, into peace. And peace doesn't come when everything is resolved. Peace comes when you resolve to stop resisting what is. Surrender is not about passive submission. It's about active trust. It's not about giving up. It's about giving over. Giving your worries back to the universe. Giving your attachment to outcomes back to God. Giving your burdens to something larger, wiser, more loving than your fearful mind. The great spiritual teachers all spoke this truth. Jesus said, "Not my will, but thine be done." Lao Tzu taught that yielding overcomes the hard. Rumi whispered, "Try to be like a tree, let the dead leaves drop." These weren't invitations to give up, they were calls to wake up. Wake up from the illusion of control and step into the mystery of grace. The ego hates surrender because it fears death. But the soul loves surrender because it knows that's where rebirth happens. Imagine standing in the middle of a great river, trying to hold back the current. You push, you strain, you shout, and still the river moves on. You exhaust yourself trying to dam the infinite. Until one day you realize, what if the river is not your enemy? What if it's your deliverance? So you let go. And in that sacred release, you are carried, not away from yourself, but back home to yourself, to the you that is already whole, to the you that has always been enough, to the you that never needed to force what was already unfolding. Surrender is how the wound becomes the womb. It's how endings become openings. It's how breakdown becomes breakthrough. It is not an act of collapse, but of cooperation with what is holy. When you stop clinging to your pain can begin to heal. When you stop needing people to be different, you start to see them through the eyes of compassion. When you stop demanding that life match your script, you begin to read the script. Life has been lovingly handing you all along. To surrender is to see with new eyes. You begin to realize that the things you thought were problems were really invitations, that the detours were actually directions, that the closed doors were actually protection. Surrender gives you the clarity to see that life has always been happening for you, not to you. This doesn't mean you abandon your dreams. It means you stop worshiping your preferences. You stop believing that your happiness depends on the outcome. You start dancing with life rather than dragging it behind you. The surrendered soul still dreams, but they let go of how it must happen. They still desire, but they trust in divine timing. They still act, but without the desperation of the ego's agenda. They live in harmony, not in fear. And here is the paradox of surrender. The more you let go, the more you receive. The more you release control, the more peace flows in. The more you stop striving, the more grace arrives. Because grace is not earned, it is allowed. It is not a reward, it is a river that's always flowing. But you cannot feel its flow while you are clutching to the rocks of resistance. You must let go. And in that letting go, you will not fall, you will float. You are not here to suffer under the illusion of control. You are here to remember the truth, that there's a rhythm to this universe, and your soul already knows the dance. You only need to surrender to the music. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that love is a better master than fear. Let your heart break open. Let your plans dissolve if they must. Let the healing begin where the holding stops. There is nothing more courageous than a soul who chooses surrender, not because they've given up, but because they've woken up. You cannot force the flower to bloom. You can only create the conditions for blooming and then let it happen in its own divine time. So it is with your joy, your purpose, your healing. You prepare your heart and then you let go. You stop pushing the river and you allow yourself to be carried. You are not the one holding the stars in place, nor do you cause the tides to roll in and out. And yet, isn't it strange how often we try to control the rhythm of life as if the entire universe hinges on our will? But control is a false security. It is the prison we construct when trust feels too vulnerable. And the bars are made of expectations, hard, sharp, unyielding. Every moment we cling to should, must, can't, or never, we're reinforcing a world built not on presence, but on fear. Yet the soul lives on trust. Not a blind, naive trust, but a deep, intuitive knowing that life is intelligent, that the same force that turns an acorn into an oak knows how to turn your pain into wisdom. When you surrender, you are not falling behind. You are catching up with your destiny. You are stepping out of the storm of the mind and into the calm of your being. You are saying, I trust the path, even when I cannot see the next step. That is not weakness, that is power. That is not foolishness, that is faith. Have you ever noticed the most beautiful moments of your life came unplanned? The laughter you didn't expect, the connection that arrived like a gift, the healing that happened not when you tried, but when you stopped trying. The universe has a rhythm, and it does not follow the clock on your wall or the calendar on your phone. It beats in stillness. It speaks in silence. It moves in its own mysterious, divine timing. And surrender is how you sync with it. The ego will always offer you ultimatums, fight or fail, control or collapse. But there is a third way, the way of surrender. It is the way of the Tao, the path of least resistance. It is not passive. It is participatory. You are not abandoning life. You are cooperating with it. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to show me? Because everything that enters your life comes bearing a message, not as punishment, not as cruelty, but as invitation. Every heartbreak is an invitation to open wider. Every delay is an invitation to trust deeper. Every loss is an invitation to love what remains. And when you stop trying to manage the message, you can begin to receive it. Do not underestimate the strength it takes to surrender. It takes courage to stop swimming upstream. It takes boldness to trust what you cannot see. But in that surrender, your energy returns. Your peace returns. And you begin to discover you were never meant to figure it all out. You were meant to remember that you are not alone in this. There is a current to this life, and it knows exactly where you're meant to go. So many people spend their lives chasing outcomes, running, fixing, striving, reaching, all in the name of some distant peace that always seems just beyond the next accomplishment. But peace is not something you earn, it is something you allow. It is not a goal. It is the natural state that arises when you no longer resist this moment. You stop seeking, you start seeing, you stop controlling, you start receiving, you stop forcing, you start flowing, and you realize that surrender isn't something you do once, it's something you practice every day. Every morning you rise and say, I release what I cannot control. I trust what I cannot see. I allow what wants to come through me. That is not passivity. That is the most powerful declaration of alignment you can make. You don't need to bend life to your will. You only need to align your will with life. This shift from control to cooperation is where everything begins to change. Not necessarily on the outside, but on the inside. The battles in your mind begin to quiet. The arguments you keep having with reality start to dissolve. The tension that sits behind your eyes, in your neck, in your chest begins to soften. And in that softness, you begin to remember who you really are. Not the stressed mind, not the desperate planner, not the hardened identity. You are the spacious awareness beneath all that. You are the stillness that watches it all come and go. You are the open sky, not the weather passing through it. And surrender is how the sky remembers itself. When you stop identifying with the storm no longer defines you. When you stop believing every fearful thought, those thoughts lose their grip. When you stop resisting the waves, you begin to surf. And isn't that the art of life? Not drowning in the waves, not stopping the waves, but learning to surf the divine ocean of change with grace, humor, and trust. The ego fears change. The soul knows that change is the only way truth reveals itself. So stop bracing for impact, start leaning into flow. If your plans are falling apart, it's because something better is coming together. If your path is unclear, it's because you're being invited to trust. If everything you once clung to is slipping away, it's because you're being asked to hold something higher, something eternal, something unshakable. And what is more unshakable than a soul at peace? That kind of peace cannot be faked. It cannot be found in possessions and status and achievements. It only arises when you finally stop trying to manipulate your way into a perfect life and instead welcome the perfectly imperfect life you already have. Because that life, messy, raw, sacred, and unfolding, is the only place where grace can meet you. The moment you stop needing things to change in order to be okay, you've entered the realm of true power. The moment you release your grip on how things should be, you become available for how beautifully they can be. The moment you surrender, you are no longer living in resistance. You are living in resonance. That is the difference between effort and ease, between anxiety and awareness, between exhaustion and embodiment. This is not about sitting still and doing nothing. This is about sitting still and doing the inner work of releasing your attachment to control. Then and only then do you rise to act from clarity, not fear. From love, not lack. From wisdom, not worry. You move not because you're afraid to fall behind, but because your soul is moved to act. This is the paradox of surrender. It does not stop your motion. It sanctifies it. You begin to live from inspiration rather than desperation. You become a vessel rather than a victim. You flow with divine energy rather than fighting it. And that is what it means to live as a spiritual being, having a human experience. You remember that you are not the doer of all things. You are the expression of something greater. You are the melody, not the musician. The light, not the lamp. Surrender is the art of remembering. I don't have to carry this alone. The mind will scream, but what if it doesn't work out? And the heart, in its soft strength, will whisper back, what if it works out better than I imagined? Surrender is learning to trust the whisper more than the scream. It is choosing the still voice within over the noisy voice without. It is the sacred shift from fear to faith, from demanding life conform to your timeline to allowing life to unfold in divine time. Surrender is not the end of desire. It is the purification of it. It is not that you no longer wish, dream, or move, but that you do so without clutching. You do so with open hands and a soft gaze. You plant seeds, not because you're desperate for harvest, but because you're honoring the natural rhythm of creation. You water, you wait, you trust, and even if nothing sprouts in the way you expected, you trust that the earth is still working, that something is shifting below the surface. That growth doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet stretch in the dark, a subtle rearrangement of roots, an invisible awakening. The ego cannot comprehend this kind of subtle power, but the soul was made for it. The soul is not impatient. The soul knows that real transformation often happens in the spaces between, in the pauses, in the surrender. When you stop doing, pushing, demanding, and instead fall into being, that's where the alchemy begins. Do you remember what it felt like to rest without guilt? To trust without proof? To breathe without bracing? Surrender is the return to that original state, the one you knew as a child, before the world taught you fear, control, and conditional worth. It is the sacred coming home to the you that is not tangled in outcomes. The you that knows you are loved, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, who you've always been. Not the performer, not the fixer, not the one holding all the pieces together, but the soul, the still point, the light behind the thoughts. And in that remembering, healing becomes possible. Not because you fought your way there, but because you stopped blocking the healing that was trying to reach you. Everything you're looking for already wants to reach you, but it cannot pass through the gates of fear. You must unlock the door with surrender. Surrender your timeline. Surrender your need for validation. Surrender your tight grip on what healing should look like. And instead, listen. Let the silence teach you. Let the grief soften you. Let the stillness rebuild you. There is a wisdom that arrives only in the absence of effort. A kind of divine intelligence that you do not create but commune with. It cannot be summoned. It can only be received. And surrender is the posture of receiving. You bow inward, not in defeat, but in reverence. You say, I don't know how this will unfold, but I trust that I am being led. You say, I release my story of suffering, and I welcome the miracle in its place. You say, I am not afraid to let go, because what is truly mine will never require force to remain. That is the voice of the awakened one. That is the language of surrender. It is in this surrender that you become available to the present, because only in this moment, not the one you're imagining, not the one you're trying to fix, but this one is where love lives, is where healing breathes, is where miracles wait patiently for you to finally notice them. We miss the sacred so often, not because it isn't there, but because we are too busy controlling what's next to feel what's here. You were not designed to bear the burden of every outcome. You were not wired to micromanage the cosmos. That's not your job, that's God's. Your job is to be a willing vessel, a clear conduit, an open window for light, and light can't pass through when the blinds of fear are drawn shut. You must open, you must allow. And when you do, when you surrender your need to know, to control, to manipulate, the universe begins to move through you. Ideas arise, synchronicities unfold, people appear, doors open, but not because you forced it, because you became available to the rhythm of your soul. And what is your soul's rhythm? It is ease, it is grace, it is peace, it is love. It is the quiet knowing that you are not behind, not broken, not late, but right on time, right on path, right where you need to be. There is no place to get to, only a presence to return to. And surrender is that return. The mind may resist this. It has been trained to believe that pressure creates progress, that the tighter you grip, the more you'll control. But pressure is not presence, and gripping only creates more fear. Let go. Let the leaves fall. Let the river run. Let the mystery remain a mystery, and learn to enjoy the ride instead of fearing it. You do not need to have it all figured out. You only need to be aligned with your truth. And your truth is never rooted in fear. It is rooted in love. It is rooted in trust. It is rooted in the wisdom that says, even if I don't know where I'm going, I trust the one who guides me. This is the path of surrender. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it, because it will give you something the world cannot. Peace without proof, joy without condition, freedom without permission. And that, beloved, is power. You see, the art of surrender is not about erasing your will. It's about aligning your will with something higher. It's about learning to listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Because when you're fully present, when you're not lost in the anxious rehearsal of tomorrow or the painful replay of yesterday, something miraculous begins to occur. You start to hear the voice of your own soul. And your soul is always guiding you toward peace. But peace doesn't come from getting everything right. Peace is the byproduct of remembering that you were never wrong to begin with, that you've always been loved, that the real you, the one beneath the masks, beneath the fear, beneath the striving, has always been whole. Surrender doesn't make you less. It brings you back to the you that isn't built on conditions. The you that existed before the world told you who you had to be, before you learned to pretend, before you began bargaining for love through perfection, performance, or people-pleasing. Surrender returns you to your essence. And your essence was never separate from God. This is the mystical truth that so many miss in their quest to succeed, to heal, to transform, that you are not some broken thing that needs to be endlessly fixed. You are already divine, already worthy, already connected. The only thing in the way is your resistance to believing it. And that resistance, that constant inner battle, is what surrender seeks to dissolve. It is not a giving up of who you are. It is a letting go of who you are not. You are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your regrets, your roles, or your wounds. You are not your name. You are not your story. You are the one who is aware of all of those things, yet untouched by any of them. The witness, the presence, the eternal one, behind the ever-changing forms. And when you live from this place, this surrendered awareness, life begins to mirror back to you a kind of grace that you once thought only belonged to saints or sages. You realize you don't need to chase miracles. Your very presence becomes a miracle. Because what is more miraculous than a human being who has laid down their weapons, the weapon of judgment, the weapon of fear, the weapon of shame, and chosen to walk with open hands and an open heart? What is more radiant than a person who trusts life deeply even when it's unclear? This kind of trust is not blind, it is not naive, it is born of intimacy. Intimacy with the self, with spirit, with the patterns that unfold when we stop interfering and start participating. There's a rhythm to grace, and when you surrender, you move with that rhythm, not against it. You speak with less urgency and more clarity. You love with less attachment and more freedom. You live with less fear and more awe. And awe is the natural result of surrender. Because the more you release the illusion of control, the more space there is for wonder, the more room there is for mystery. And the more mystery you allow, the more you begin to recognize that you are not alone in this, that something is moving through you, guiding, shaping, orchestrating. That something does not speak in demands. It speaks in whispers. And you must be still to hear it. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is receptivity. It is the spiritual posture of surrender. And in that posture, you don't lose your power, you magnify it. Because true power has nothing to prove. It does not dominate, it does not strive, it does not fear the unknown. True power rests in trust. It walks gently, it acts clearly, it speaks only when needed. And sometimes true power is silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because it knows that presence says more than words ever could. Let yourself be present. Let yourself be emptied. Let yourself become a vessel again. There's a sacred spaciousness that opens when you surrender your agenda and allow life to surprise you. You start to see with new eyes. You begin to experience every moment not as something to be controlled, but as something to be cherished. Even the difficult ones, even the painful ones, because you come to realize that every moment is part of the curriculum. Every detour is part of the path. Every loss is a hidden invitation to return to love. And love, not fear, is the ground of your being. When you surrender, you return to that ground. You let life soften you. You let it stretch you. You let it strip away everything that is not essential, not true, not real, until all that remains is what cannot be lost. And what cannot be lost is what you are. You are not the one drowning. You are the ocean itself. You are not the one falling. You are the sky that holds the fall. You are not the one struggling. You are the silence beneath the struggle, watching, waiting, loving, always. This remembrance is the fruit of surrender. And like all true spiritual fruits, it cannot be rushed. It ripens in its own time. So be patient with your process. Be gentle with your becoming. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are being refined. And surrender is the fire that purifies, not by burning you down, but by burning away what you are not. What's left is gold. What's left is truth. What's left is peace, not because everything makes sense, but because you've made peace with not needing it to. That is power. And it was never about winning. It was about awakening. The awakened heart no longer needs to control the waves. It learns to move with them. It learns to bow to the rhythm of life, not in fear, but in reverence, not in resignation, but in freedom. When you surrender, you do not disappear, you finally appear, because everything you were pretending to be falls away. And the real you, the eternal you, the radiant, divine spark that has never been stained by trauma, shame, or fear, steps forward. That is the power of surrender. You are not diminished by letting go. You are revealed. You are not weakened by yielding. You are liberated. You are not erased. You are remembered. And so breathe now, deeply. Breathe like someone who no longer has to figure it all out. Breathe like someone who belongs to something sacred. Breathe like someone who trusts the tide to carry what needs to be carried and trusts the shore to receive what is meant to remain. Let the armor fall. Let the story unravel. Let the old identity dissolve into silence. You are not here to maintain the facade. You are here to wake up from it. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is the sacred choice to stop worshiping fear. It is the decision to stop playing small. It is the moment you say, I will no longer grip what wants to go. I will no longer chase what is not mine. I will no longer demand that life rearrange itself for my comfort. I will instead rearrange myself for truth. That is power. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout. The kind of power that doesn't fear change. The kind of power that walks into the unknown with steady eyes and a steady heart because it knows that even in the dark, you are never alone. You have always been carried. Even in the silence, you are being guided. Even in the waiting, you were being reshaped. Even in the loss, you were being prepared for more than you knew. And now you remember. You remember what it means to surrender, not because you're broken, but because you're brave enough to stop pretending you were ever in control. You are no longer afraid to kneel at the altar of this moment. No longer afraid to let the past go where it belongs behind you. No longer afraid to trust what you cannot yet see because the invisible has always been the most real. Surrender is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your return to presence, to simplicity, to stillness, to love, to the part of you that doesn't need to impress, to win, to prove only to be. And what could be more powerful than that? To be here, to be aware, to be open, to be free. That is the path of surrender. It is the way of the mystic, the way of the healer, the way of the heart. It is the way of those who no longer wish to live by force, but by faith. So walk gently now. You don't need to fix the future, just feel the now. You don't need to explain your journey, just embody your truth. You don't need to hold the whole world together, just return to the wholeness that is holding you. Right here, right now, everything is unfolding. Everything is being rearranged in your favor. And your only task is this, to let go of what was never yours and trust what has always been. The love, the presence, the breath, the peace, that is the gift. That is the offering. That is your power. Surrender to it and become it. There is a stillness behind every breath you take, a place untouched by fear, unsullied by judgment, unbroken by time. It is the space of your being, eternal and present. And in that space, the great miracle of transformation begins not through striving, not through control, not through the clenched fists of resistance, but through the open hands of acceptance. Acceptance is not surrender, it is not apathy, it is not weakness. It is the courageous, soul-deep acknowledgement that this moment as it is enough. Not because it conforms to your expectations, not because it gives you everything you think you need, but because it simply is. And in its isness, it is sacred. Transformation begins the moment you stop arguing with reality. The moment you cease demanding that life should have gone another way. The moment you unclench from the past, loosen your grip on your imagined future, and soften into the now. This is not passivity, this is power. The power of presence, the power of trust, the power of alignment with a deeper wisdom that transcends your intellect. Most people believe change begins when the outside world shifts, when the job is found, when the partner returns, when the pain finally disappears. But the truth, the deep and liberating truth, is that change begins inside. It begins when you turn toward your life and not to fix it, not to escape it, but to be with it. To embrace what is, so that what is no longer needed can fall away. There is an old story you've been telling, a story of what should have happened, of what you've lost, of what they did, a story of shame or blame or regret. You carry it like a backpack of bricks, hoping it will finally bring justice or clarity or control. But the story is not your salvation. The story is your chain. And acceptance is the key that unlocks the door. To accept is not to approve. To accept is to see clearly, to stand still in the presence of what is, without flinching, without running, without denial. There's a kind of sacred vision that comes only when the ego quiets its complaints, when the heart stops closing doors, and when the soul is given the microphone. Acceptance is the posture of the soul. When you accept your past, it cannot haunt you. When you accept your emotions, they cannot drown you. When you accept yourself, your light, your darkness, your flaws, your beauty, you stop waiting to become someone else, and you finally arrive as yourself. This world does not need more perfected personas. It does not need more masks or performances. It needs realness. It needs presence. It needs the radiant authenticity that pours from someone who has looked at every broken part of themselves and said, yes, even this, I will not turn away. The pain you resist becomes your prison. The moment you say, this should not be, you cast yourself into inner war. But the moment you say, this is what is, you return to peace. From that peace, true change can resonate as a frantic sprint, away from what you hate, but as a gentle, guided unfolding toward who you really are. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly by force. It does not rip its own skin off in rebellion. It goes still. It surrenders. It cocoons into darkness and accepts the disintegration of all it has known. Only then can the wings form. Only then can the transformation take flight. You too must be willing to enter that sacred cocoon, to stop trying to be elsewhere, to stop judging your sadness, your anger, your confusion. These are not signs of failure. They are invitations to feel, to heal, to listen, to love. The ego will fight this. It wants movement. It wants drama. It wants victory through struggle. But the soul speaks a quieter language. It whispers in stillness. It heals through presence. And it transforms through acceptance. You have not been broken by your past. You have been shaped by it, tempered, refined, initiated. The fire did not destroy you, it revealed you. The rain did not drown, you washed away what you were never meant to carry. And the darkness was not a punishment, it was a womb, a place of becoming. Acceptance is how you make peace with the womb. It is how you sit inside the mystery and say, I don't need to understand this to trust it. The oak tree does not understand the storm, but it does not resist it. It bends, it roots, it waits, and when the winds come, it is stronger, deeper, wiser. You have carried expectations like shields, assumptions like swords, but these weapons do not protect you. They separate you from others, from peace, from your own divine nature. Lay them down. Let the story of who you thought you had to be dissolved. Return to your original self, the one who needed no reason to be worthy, the one who knew how to dance in the rain, the one who loved without a why. You are not here to control the river. You are here to learn how to float, how to feel the current beneath you and trust it is carrying you exactly where you need to go. Resistance is exhaustion. Acceptance is grace. And grace is not something you earn, it is something you allow, something you receive when you stop trying to deserve it. Grace enters when your hands are open, not clenched. It enters when your heart is soft, not armored. It enters through the door of acceptance. That door has always been waiting for you to step out of the courtroom of your mind and into the sanctuary of your spirit, waiting for you to stop defending and start discovering, waiting for you to see that there is nothing wrong with you, only thoughts that told you there was. Even the pain, even the failure, even the lonely, none of it was wrong. All of it was part of your becoming, part of your sacred curriculum. And when you accept that, the pain becomes wisdom, the failure becomes freedom, and the loneliness becomes a gateway to the divine. Keep breathing, keep softening, keep letting go of the need for life to be other than it is. What if everything you've been trying to fix is already perfect in its unfolding? What if the healing isn't something you achieve, but something you stop resisting? You are not a problem to be solved. You are a soul to be felt. You are a mystery to be lived. You are a wave of divine intelligence moving through a temporary form, and every experience is a note in the song of your awakening. And the song doesn't need to be rewritten, it only needs to be heard. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not even the name you answer to. You are the witness behind it all. The presence that observes, that breathes, that remains. And in that witnessing, in that sacred noticing, you begin to awaken. You begin to realize that nothing outside of you has the authority to define your worth. Only your own awareness can do that. And awareness, when paired with acceptance, becomes liberation. How long will you wait for permission to be at peace? How many years will you spend negotiating with the past, bargaining with the future, trying to twist yourself into some idea of enough? What if you paused right now and said, this is enough, I am enough, and I no longer need to be at war with life? There is such relief in no longer needing to fight. Not because you've given up, but because you've risen up. Risen into a higher truth, where peace is not earned through struggle, but remembered through surrender. In this remembering, your entire life becomes softer. It becomes more honest. You stop chasing illusions, and you begin to live. The soul does not speak in demands. It speaks in invitations. And every moment is an invitation to return to your breath, to your body, to your truth. To return to the quiet space beneath the noise, where life simply is. No judgments, no stories, just now, just presence, just being. Most people live in a cage built by their own minds. The bars are made of expectations, and the lock is resistance. But the key has always been in your hands. It's called acceptance. And when you use it, the cage disappears not because the world changed, but because your vision did. Imagine the peace that arises when you no longer need to control how others see you. Imagine the freedom when you stop trying to rewrite the past. Imagine the love you can offer yourself when you stop demanding that you be any different than you are. This is not complacency. It is awakening. The seed does not judge itself for not yet being a tree. It simply allows the rain, welcomes the sun, and trusts the unfolding. So must you. You were never meant to be anyone else. Your pain, your past, your peculiarities, they are not deviations from your path. They are your path. They are the exact conditions necessary for your soul to flower. Stop wishing they were different. Start listening to what they are here to teach. Acceptance is not the end of transformation. It is the beginning. When you finally stop trying to escape the moment becomes your teacher. When you stop resisting what is, you begin to receive what is. And that receiving is where healing begins. You may believe that you'll accept life once it gets better. But in truth, life gets better the moment you accept it. Because your suffering has never come from the moment itself. It has come from the thought that the moment should be something else. When you stop arguing with what is, your energy returns to you. And that energy can be used for love, for creativity, for connection, for truth. Resistance drains, acceptance replenishes. In the presence of acceptance, fear dissolves, because fear feeds on control. But when you accept that you do not need to control, fear loses its grip. And in that loosening, a deeper trust is born not in the mind, but in life itself. You begin to see that everything that has ever happened was not in the way, but on the way. Every detour, every heartbreak, every delay it was all divine choreography. You may not have chosen the pain, but the pain chose you for a reason. Not to punish, but to purify. Not to destroy, but to awaken. And when you accept that, you stop asking, why did this happen to me? and you begin to ask, what is this here to reveal in me? That shift changes everything. It shifts you from victim to vessel, from resentment to reverence, from anxiety to awe. The truth is, nothing needs to change for you to be free. Freedom is not a future destination. It is a present realization. It is a choice to see what is without resistance, without judgment, without running away. And when you truly see it, you begin to love it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real, because it's yours, because it brought you here. And here this sacred, raw, imperfect here is where the divine lives. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin living. This is the moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this rising and falling of the chest. The divine is not elsewhere. It is right here. In the messy, the mundane, the misunderstood, this is where your transformation begins. It begins when you soften instead of harden, when you stay instead of flee, when you say yes to what is, even when it breaks your heart, especially when it breaks your heart. Because the heart must break open for the soul to shine through. And oh, how it shines. Not through the perfect mask of a polished life, but through the cracks, the flaws, the places where the light got in. Your scars are not your shame. They are your sanctuaries. Places where you were cracked open and still chose love. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to remember everything, to remember that you are whole, that you are held, that you are a wave of divine light temporarily having a human experience. And acceptance is how you remember. When you stop trying to be someone else, you come home to who you already are. And that home is not a place of perfection, it is a place of peace. A place where you can rest, where you can breathe, where you can finally lay down the burden of becoming and rise into the grace of being. This is the real miracle. Not that you changed life, but that you changed your relationship with life. That you chose to see with new eyes, to listen with an open heart, to walk not in fear, but in faith. And this faith is not blind, it is intimate. It is rooted in a knowing that cannot be explained, only felt. A knowing that whispers, even this is part of it. Even this has a place. Even this can be holy. The rain has never apologized for falling. The ocean does not regret its waves. The mountain does not wish to be smaller, and neither should you. Accept yourself as nature accepts itself unapologetically, unconditionally, unreservedly, because only when you accept yourself can you truly love yourself. And only when you love yourself can you truly love others. All transformation begins here, not out there, not later, but here. In the quiet revolution of accepting this moment, this breath, this you. So breathe, return, and open the door. Not the door of striving or proving, but the door of surrender. The door of yes. The door that has been waiting for you all along. And when you walk through that door, you do not find escape. You find arrival. You do not find perfection. You find peace. You do not find answers. You find acceptance. And that is the beginning of everything. Let this be your sacred turning point, not in outer form, but in inner knowing. Let this be the moment you say to yourself, with all the tenderness in the world, I will no longer resist this life. I will no longer push against this moment. I will accept myself. I will accept this path. I will accept the presence of the divine in all things. And as you do, the door swings open, the light floods in, the burdens drop away, and transformation no longer feels like effort. It feels like truth. It feels like peace. It feels like home. But don't just accept what feels easy. Accept even what you do not understand. Accept the mess. Accept the noise. Accept the days when the answers do not come. Because those are the days your spirit is doing its deepest work. The soil does not resist the seed just because it does not yet bloom. It holds it. It keeps it safe. And so must you hold your process without judgment, without haste, without shame. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken or lost. You are exactly where you are meant to be, not as a punishment, not as a failure, but as a sacred pause, a necessary inhale before the next unfolding. Stop measuring your growth with someone else's ruler. Your journey is too sacred for comparison. There is a wisdom in the silence. There is healing in the slowness, but only if you can accept it. If you can sit with the discomfort and allow it to soften you. Let life knead you like clay, molding you not into perfection, but into presence. And presence is where love lives. Can you love yourself when you're not performing? Can you honor your soul when you're not being praised? Can you sit in your solitude and still feel divine? Because that's what it means to accept yourself. Not when you're polished, not when you're accomplished, but now. In the sweat, in the uncertainty, in the imperfection. This is what real healing looks like, not the erasing of scars, but the honoring of them. Not pretending you were never wounded, but bowing to the strength it took to survive. You are not here to hide your story. You are here to illuminate it, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testimony of rising. So let the pain be part of your poetry. Let the failures be folded into your freedom. Let the heartbreak become holy. There is no part of your experience that is not worthy of reverence. Nothing that needs to be exiled from the sacred space of your becoming. And if tears come, let them fall. Do not apologize for feeling. Do not harden just to be accepted. Because the truth is, your softness is your strength. Your emotions are not weaknesses. They are rivers that carve valleys of compassion into your soul. Let them flow. Let them teach. Let them reveal the truth you've hidden beneath the armor. You are safe now. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to defend. You don't have to explain your light to those committed to seeing you dim. Just be. Just breathe. Just stand in your sacred yes. Because when you stop chasing the life you think you should have, the life that was always meant for you can finally arrive. And when it does, you'll recognize it not by how perfect it looks, but by how peaceful it feels. That's how you'll know you're home. Not because everything outside is fixed, but because something inside is finally free. Free from resistance. Free from expectation. Free from the self-imposed pressure to constantly become. In that freedom, you realize, I was never meant to strive my way into peace. I was only meant to remember that I am peace itself. This remembrance changes everything. It shifts your entire vibration. It reorients your path, not away from difficulty, but toward truth. Because truth doesn't always feel comfortable, but it always sets you free. And the deepest truth is this: you are enough, as you are, right now. Not one more achievement, not one more apology, not one more moment of proving is required. You were born worthy, and nothing this world can give or take can alter that. Acceptance is how you reclaim this truth, not by doing, but by allowing. Allow yourself to exhale. Allow yourself to soften. Allow yourself to be held not by another person, but by the infinite, eternal presence that has carried you from the beginning. You are not separate from it. You are it. You are the presence you've been seeking. You are the divine disguised in human skin. And in this knowing, you stop running, you stop performing, you stop pushing away parts of yourself to be loved. You realize you don't need to be different to be whole. You need to be here to be real, to be open, to be willing to accept the pain that shaped you, the joy that sustained you, the unknown that continues to call you forward. Willing to accept that life is not a straight line, but a spiral staircase, and every return, every detour, every descent is part of the rising. Willing to accept that maybe the mountain you've been trying to climb is already within you. Maybe there's nowhere to go but deeper, deeper into stillness, deeper into self, deeper into this miraculous now. Because when you live from acceptance, you no longer live in delay. You no longer postpone your peace. You no longer wait for permission to love your life. You simply begin, right here, right now. And beginning doesn't mean changing everything. It means loving what already is. It means saying yes to the life that has said yes to you all along. So say yes. Say yes to your breath. Say yes to your history. Say yes to the places that still ache and the parts that have already healed. Say yes to the soul that longs to be felt and the love that lives just beneath your fear. Because when you say yes to all of it, transformation becomes inevitable. You cannot truly accept something and remain unchanged. Acceptance is the alchemy, the fire that doesn't burn you but reveals the gold beneath the soot. And the gold is this: you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become because of it. You are not the pain. You are the awareness holding the pain. And that awareness, your eternal self, is untouchable, indestructible, and already whole. In this space, there is nothing left to fix, only more to feel, more to welcome, more to remember. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You remember the you that danced in the rain, that trusted the wind, that didn't question your worth, because worth wasn't something you earned, it was something you were. And so you return, not as a stranger, not as a project, but as a soul who remembers. You return to life, not as a battleground, not as a test, but as a temple, a holy invitation to presence, to wonder, to joy. You return to yourself, not as a critic, not as a warrior, but as a lover, a gentle witness, a compassionate guide. And from that place of inner union, where all parts of you are seen, heard, and loved, life begins to flow again. Not perfectly, not predictably, but freely. You no longer need to push. You no longer need to prove. You simply walk in the direction of truth. With each step, the path reveals itself. With each breath, the burden lifts. With each moment of acceptance, transformation deepens. And at last, you understand the door was never locked. It was only waiting for you to stop resisting. And now that you have, you are free. So here you are now, not broken, but blooming. Not lost, but found in the stillness. Not waiting, but awakening. And all of it began, not with a battle, not with a breakthrough, but with a breath, with the simplest, most radical act of all acceptance. You didn't have to travel the world. You didn't have to become someone else. You only had to say yes. Yes to this moment, yes to this self, yes to the mystery of your becoming. And in that, yes, the struggle faded, the illusion dissolved, the noise quieted, and what remained was peace. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped demanding that life be different. You stopped needing to outrun your past. You stopped fearing the shadows in you. And you looked at it all and said, even this is worthy. Even this is sacred. Even this belongs. And with those words, you came home. So walk forward now, not hurried, not hardened, but whole. Let your steps be soft, your heart be open, your eyes see the divine in all things. And let every breath you take be a gentle reminder. You were never meant to resist your life. You were meant to live it, to feel it, to embrace it, to accept it. And in that sacred acceptance, to be transformed, you are already free. You are already whole. You are already home. And everything begins from here.